What do you want to happen, Hawaii? Would you like to become a U.S. state? Or do you want to continue being a crappy territory?
It's 1959. What kind of laws, principles, and factors are the United States obligated to follow if it's going to try to hold a vote on Hawaii's future? Well, there are several. The US's own constitution, obviously, but also the US is a signatory of the UN Charter, so we're supposed to follow everything in that. Plus UN resolutions like Resolution 742 and so on. Interestingly enough, the US stages the 1959 statehood vote in a way that manages to violate all of the above. First of all, there's the obvious question of suffrage, or who gets to vote. Under the principles of decolonization, if you're trying to undo a historical wrong, like illegally overthrowing somebody's government, you have to ask the people who suffered the violations, the colonized, what they want to happen. You don't ask the people who benefited from the stealing of the land if they feel like giving it back or not. But guess what? That's exactly what the US did. They opened the vote to everybody who was living in Hawaii at the time, knowing full well that Native Hawaiians made up less than 20% of the population, and that the remainder, settlers from the US, plantation laborers brought in from Asia, US military personnel, the US knew all of those guys would vote in favor of statehood. A second requirement for a legitimate vote is you must offer 3 choices on the ballot: independence, free association, and integration. But instead of offering the required 3, the US essentially only put one choice on the ballot: integration. Integration via statehood, or integration via continued territorial status. What kind of ballot is that?
It doesn't matter which one you choose. I get to own you either way.
Leaving independence and free association off the ballot is clearly a manipulation of the UN-sanctioned voting process. That's strike 2. Okay, third big problem. When holding a vote on Hawaii's future political status, the administering power, the United States, is required to place the interests of Hawaiians before its own interests. The UN Charter calls this mandate a sacred trust. Okay, so what does this mean? Well, practically speaking, it means that if you're going to have something like a vote, the US is obligated to conduct it fairly, so that Hawaiians would be free to choose what they really want for their future. But instead, the US did just the opposite. Before the vote, the US initiated an intense pro-statehood propaganda campaign, and just to be safe, a parallel campaign of attacking anyone who spoke up in opposition to statehood. Obviously, this is not how an administering power lives up to its sacred trust obligations. Strike 3. So yeah, the so-called statehood vote was, for several reasons, illegitimate. This is how the US was able to subvert the UN's stated goal of a world free of colonial domination. A process for decolonization was instead turned into a process of assimilation. The important thing to understand is that statehood was used to keep Hawaiians from getting their nation back. Statehood is not just an abstract concept. It can also be used as a tool for accomplishing concrete political objectives. In the case of Hawaii, statehood was, and continues to be, a strategy for obscuring a history of dispossession and repackaging it to make it look like something good, like democracy.